Say that again. Who here thinks she doesn't belong in first class? The seatbelt sign chimes 3 times. Sharp, urgent. The aisle service cart slams into the bulkhead with a metallic crack that silences the cabin. Outside the oval windows, lightning forks through black clouds like veins splitting open the sky. Row 10. A woman in a faded gray hoodie opens her eyes. She doesn't move, doesn't flinch, just watches. 3 rows ahead, a man in a tailored suit adjusts his Rolex and mutters loud enough for everyone to hear, "Seriously, security let her into Economy Plus. Look at those sneakers. Did she find them in a dumpster?" A woman across the aisle lifts her phone. Recording? "This is unbelievable," she whispers to her seatmate. "I'm documenting this for the airline complaint." The plane shudders. The cabin lights flicker once, twice, die completely for 3 seconds. When they return, the woman in the hoodie is sitting upright. Her right hand rests on the armrest. Her fingers tap a rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, matching the turbulence pattern like she's counting something no one else can see. 20 minutes from now, nobody laughs. Clementine Foster sits in 10C like she's trying to disappear into the fabric. Her hoodie is the kind of gray that used to be darker washed too many times, frayed at the cuffs. The jeans have a patch on the left knee thread color, almost matching but not quite. Her sneakers are scuffed white canvas, the kind you buy for $20 and wear until the soles separate. Under the seat in front of her, a small black backpack. No designer logo. No bright colors. Just nylon and zippers, compact enough to fit her entire life. Inside, if anyone bothered to look, a paperback novel with a broken spine, a protein bar, a water bottle refilled from airport fountains and wrapped in a cloth at the very bottom, a dog tag she hasn't worn in 3 years. She doesn't look at the man in the suit, doesn't acknowledge the woman filming her. Her eyes are closed again, but her breathing stays measured. 4 counts in. Hold. 6 counts out. The rhythm of someone who's learned to sleep through worse than public humiliation. Her left hand rests on the armrest between seats. It trembles. Just slightly a flutter in the fingers, like touching a live wire on low voltage. She shifts, moves the hand to her lap, covers it with her right. The tremor doesn't stop. It never does. Somewhere behind her closed eyelids, a memory flickers. The shriek of a missile lock warning. The bone-jarring impact of shrapnel tearing through a cockpit. A voice over the radio, "Eject, eject, eject," and her own voice calm, despite the blood running down her arm. "Negative. I'm bringing her home." She opens her eyes. The memory fades, but the tremor remains. The flight attendant, a young woman with a name tag that reads Amethyst, walks past checking overhead bins. She notices Clementine's hand, the slight shake, the way the passenger quickly hides it. For a moment, their eyes meet. Amethyst smiles gently, the kind of smile that says, "I see you're struggling, and I won't make it worse." Clementine nods once. Small. Grateful. 3 rows ahead, the man in the suit. Cassius Thatcher, though Clementine doesn't know his name yet, leans over to the woman beside him, his wife, judging by the matching wedding bands. "Vanessa, did you see her counting when she walked to the bathroom like some kind of Rain Man situation? Probably never flown before." Vanessa Chandler adjusts her phone, checking the recording angle. She makes me uncomfortable. "What if she's unstable?" Cassius snorts. "Unstable and broke. Wonderful combination at 30,000 feet. Clementine doesn't hear them. Or maybe she does and has learned not to care. Instead, she pulls a small notebook from her hoodie pocket, spiral-bound pages worn soft, and clicks, open a pen. She writes in tight, efficient script, Flight 447. Departure 2247Z, Boeing 777-300ER. Estimated cruise FL 370. Weather scattered, cumulus forecast clear. She pauses. Adds turbulence onset 2251Z. Power reduction noted. Probable WX deviation. The man across the aisle, an elderly passenger with a Vietnam veteran's ball cap, leans slightly trying to read her notes. He sees the shorthand, the abbreviations, the timestamps in Zulu time. His eyebrows rise, but he says nothing. Clementine closes the notebook, tucks it away, and leans her head against the window. Outside, the clouds are thickening. She watches lightning pulse inside them like a heartbeat. Her right hand finds her left, squeezes gently, trying to calm the tremor through pressure alone. It doesn't work. It never does. But she's used to things not working the way they should, used to being underestimated, used to being invisible. At least until she isn't. The turbulence starts as a shiver, a subtle vibration in the airframe that most passengers mistake for normal flight. But Clementine feels it in her bones, the irregular pattern, the way the plane dips and recovers just a fraction too slowly. The PA system crackles. Captain's voice professional, but tight. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're encountering some weather. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts. Flight attendants secure the cabin." The engine hum changes pitch. Lower. The power reduction is slight, but Clementine's trained ear catches it immediately. They're deviating, probably adding distance to avoid the worst of the weather cells ahead. Amethyst moves quickly down the aisle, checking seatbelts, stowing loose items. When she reaches row 10, Clementine's belt is already fastened, low on the hips, snug across the pelvis, the way pilots wear them. "Thank you," Amethyst says, noting the precision. Clementine just nods. 2 rows back, a businessman fumbles with his laptop trying to finish an email before turbulence forces him to stop. The plane drops suddenly just 50 feet, but enough to send the laptop flying. It hits the ceiling cracks against an overhead bin and tumbles into the aisle. Someone screams. The cabin lights dim to night mode. Outside the windows, darkness swallows everything, except the occasional pulse of lightning, illuminating cloud towers that rise like mountains. Griffin Donovan, the man who claims 300 hours in a Cessna, unbuckles and stands grabbing the seat backs for balance. "Hey," he calls toward the front. "Amethyst, can you move her?" He points at Clementine. "She's making the people in my row uncomfortable." Amethyst stops, turns. "Sir, her ticket is valid for 10C. "I don't care about her ticket," Griffin says, voice rising. "Look at her. She clearly doesn't belong here. This is economy plus. There are standards." Cassius Thatcher unbuckles as well, standing in the aisle despite the turbulence. His 3-piece suit is immaculate, even in the dim light. "He's right. I paid $4,200 for this seat. I expect a certain caliber of fellow passengers." Vanessa keeps her phone aimed at Clementine, recording. "This is discrimination," she says loudly, but she's not defending Clementine. She's narrating for her video. The airline allowed someone who clearly can't afford premium seating to displace paying customers. Clementine doesn't move, doesn't speak. Her eyes stay fixed on the window, watching the storm build. But her right hand finds her notebook again, opens it, writes 2258Z turbulence increasing. Estimated wind shear 40 plus KTS. Heading deviation continues. Probable cell avoidance unsuccessful. Ronan Sullivan, the Vietnam vet in 11A, leans forward. He's close enough to see what she's writing. Close enough to recognize military time notation. His eyes narrow, studying her profile. The way she sits. The way her shoulders stay level, even when the plane drops again. He's seen that posture before. In Huey's over the Mekong Delta. In the young door gunners who learned to sleep standing up because rest came in 30-second intervals. "Miss," he says quietly. Clementine turns slightly. Their eyes meet. "You military?" Ronan asks. Before she can answer, the plane shudders violently. Not turbulence. Something worse. The airframe groans a deep metallic sound that makes experienced flyers go rigid. The PA crackles again. "Flight attendants, take your seats now." Amethyst practically runs to the nearest jump seat, buckling in with practiced speed. Cassius stumbles, grabs an armrest, barely avoids falling. What the hell was that? Griffin drops back into his seat, face pale. Clementine closes her notebook. Her trembling left hand grips the armrest. Her right hand moves to the seatbelt, checking tension instinctively. And she whispers so quietly, only Ronan can hear wind shear. Probably 40 knots vertical component. We just dropped through a microburst. Ronan stares at her. How do you know that? She doesn't answer. Just watches the cockpit door like she can see through it. The turbulence doesn't stop. It escalates. The plane pitches, left-rights itself pitches again. The rhythm is wrong, chaotic instead of predictable. Clementine's fingers tap faster on the armrest. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Not nervousness, calculation. She's counting the intervals between jolts, measuring severity, building a mental map of the storm system they're flying through. Overhead, the oxygen masks swing in their compartments but don't deploy. Not yet. But Clementine's eyes track them anyway. She notes the nearest mask, the deployment handle, the flow indicator that will turn green when oxygen flows. Her gaze shifts to the emergency exit row 24, 14 rows back. She already counted when she boarded, noting the path, the obstacles, the time it would take to reach it in darkness. She whispers again, too quiet for anyone but Ronan. Squawk 7700 if this gets worse. Ronan leans closer. What does that mean? Emergency transponder code, she says, eyes still on the cockpit door. Tells air traffic control we're in serious trouble. Gets us priority handling. How do you know that? She finally looks at him. Because I've used it before. Before Ronan can respond, Dr. Iris Kaimana, a trauma surgeon in 8B, turns in her seat. She's been listening. Miss, are you a pilot? Clementine hesitates. 3 seconds. Then, I was. Was. The plane drops again, harder this time. The seatbelt sign chimes frantically. Someone in the back starts praying in Spanish loud enough to carry over the engine noise. Clementine's left hand seizes. Not a tremor now, but a full cramp. Her fingers lock into a claw. She gasps. Tries to hide it, but Dr. Iris sees. The surgeon's eyes narrow. Professional assessment. Nerve damage. Clementine nods, using her right hand to massage the left, trying to force the muscles to relax. Radial nerve, Dr. Iris asks. Another nod. Combat injury. Clementine meets her eyes. Doesn't answer. Doesn't need to. Griffin Donovan has been watching this exchange. He pulls out his phone, no signal at altitude, but the camera still works. He starts filming. Are you recording this? He says to Vanessa. She just admitted she has nerve damage. She's physically disabled and she's claiming she was a pilot. This is stolen valor. Has to be. Vanessa zooms in on Clementine's trembling hand. I'm getting everything. Cassius stands again, ignoring the seatbelt sign. Amethyst, I want her credentials verified. Now. If she's lying about being a pilot, that's a federal offense. Amethyst unbuckles reluctantly, makes her way to row 10. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but do you have any identification that shows... The cockpit door opens. Sawyer Blake. First officer. 27 years old, eyes wide, with something that looks like fear, steps into the cabin. He's supposed to look calm, supposed to project confidence, but his hands are shaking worse than Clementine's. Is there a doctor on board? He asks. His voice cracks. We need a doctor in the cockpit. Now. Dr. Iris stands immediately. I'm a surgeon. Please come with me, Sawyer says. Then louder. Is there anyone else with medical training or aviation experience? The cabin goes silent, except for the storm hammering the fuselage. Clementine's right hand moves to her hoodie pocket, touches the cloth-wrapped dog tag through the fabric. She doesn't stand. Not yet. But Ronan is watching her. So is Dr. Iris. So is Sawyer, even though he doesn't know what he's looking at. And somewhere in the cockpit behind him, Captain Mitchell is dying. Doctor. Iris moves quickly toward the cockpit medical bag in hand. Sawyer holds the door open just wide enough for her to slip through, then pulls it shut behind them. The click of the lock echoes in the sudden quiet. For 10 seconds, nobody speaks. Then the PA crackles. Sawyer's voice no longer professional. Raw. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Mitchell has collapsed. He's experiencing cardiac symptoms. Dr. Kaimana is with him now, but we need immediate assistance. If there are any pilots, air traffic controllers, or emergency responders on board, please identify yourselves immediately. The cabin erupts. Oh my God. The captain is having a heart attack. We're going to crash. A woman in 15C starts sobbing. Her infant daughter, sensing panic, begins to wail. Serenity Brooks. The single mother clutches the baby tighter, whispering prayers that don't stop the fear in her voice. Felicity Kane, 8 years old, traveling alone, presses her stuffed penguin against the window and squeezes her eyes shut. Cassius Thatcher strides toward the cockpit. I need to speak to whoever's flying this plane. Now. Amethyst blocks him. Sir, you need to return to your seat. Get out of my way. Cassius tries to push past her. If the captain is down, we need someone competent in that cockpit, not a trainee. Griffin Donovan stands as well. I have 300 hours of flight time, Cessna 172 and 182. I've flown in weather conditions similar to this. I can assist if needed. The PA crackles again. This time, it's a different voice. Older, calmer. Flight 4047. This is Denver Center. We copy your emergency. Squawk 7700. State souls on board and fuel remaining. Through the thin cockpit door, they can hear Sawyer's response. Denver Center, Flight 447, squawking 7700. 312 souls on board. Fuel remaining. Approximately 9,000 pounds. Request priority vectors to nearest suitable airport. Flight 447, nearest suitable airport, is Denver International bearing 085, distance 120 miles. Be advised weather at Denver is below minimums. Visibility 1/4 mile in heavy snow. Winds 270 at 35, gusting 48. In 10C, Clementine's eyes close. She's calculating. Distance fuel burn rate single pilot workload in severe weather approach minimums. The numbers don't work. Denver is too far. The weather is too bad. And Sawyer Blake, as competent as he might be on a normal day, has never flown solo in conditions like this. She knows because she's read the fear in his voice, the slight hesitation before he keyed the mic, the way his hand shook when he opened the cockpit door. He's a good pilot, but good isn't enough tonight. The cockpit door opens again. Dr. Iris steps out, her face grim. She motions to Amethyst, speaks quietly, but the cabin is silent enough that everyone hears, he's in full cardiac arrest. I've started CPR, but he needs a hospital. Soon, or he's not going to make it. How soon? Amethyst asks. 20 minutes, maybe 30 if we're lucky. The passengers hear this. The sobbing intensifies. Garrett Flynn, an engineer in 12D, pulls out his phone to text his wife, realizes there's no signal, and just stares at the blank screen. Cassius shouts toward the cockpit. First Officer Blake. We have a volunteer pilot out here. Griffin Donovan, 300 hours instrument rated. Open this door and let him help you. Sawyer's voice through the door. Sir, civilian flight time doesn't qualify someone to fly a 777 in emergency conditions. Then what do you suggest? Cassius demands. You fly solo and hope for the best. You're what, 12 years old? I'm 27. You look like you should be checking IDs at a bar, not flying a jumbo jet through a goddamn hurricane. Griffin moves closer to the cockpit. First Officer. I'm serious. I can read instruments. I know radio procedures. I can be your co-pilot until we land. Clementine stands. The movement is quiet, deliberate, but Ronan notices immediately. So does Dr. Iris, who's standing near the cockpit door. Clementine walks forward. Her gait is steady despite the turbulence. She moves like someone who's walked down aircraft aisles in much worse conditions. Cassius sees her approach. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Now the homeless woman thinks she can fly. Vanessa lifts her phone. Recording. Clementine stops in front of Amethyst, speaks quietly, directly. I'm a pilot. Former Air Force. I can help. Amethyst blinks. Ma'am, do you have credentials? A license ID, anything that shows my credentials are classified, Clementine says. But I can prove it if you let me into that cockpit. Cassius laughs. Actually laughs. Classified. That's the best you can come up with. Lady Stolen Valor is a federal crime. Amethyst, do not open that door. Griffin steps between Clementine and the cockpit. I'm sorry, but we can't trust someone who won't even show ID. I have my pilot's license right here. He pulls out his wallet, shows a small plastic card. See certified, verified, real. Clementine doesn't look at the card. She looks at Sawyer, who's opened the cockpit door a crack, watching this unfold. First Officer Blake. She says, her voice cutting through the noise. What's your current altitude? Sawyer blinks, surprised by the direct question. Flight level 310. Airspeed 420 knots. Fuel state 8,700 pounds. You're burning fuel fighting the turbulence, Clementine says. If you reduce power slightly, let the aircraft ride the wave instead of muscling through it, you'll save 500 pounds in the next 10 minutes. Sawyer stares at her. How do you... Because I've flown through worse than this, Clementine says. And I'm the only person on this plane who knows how to get you out of it alive. Cassius grabs her shoulder. Enough. Amethyst calls security to have her restrained when we land. This is harassment. Clementine's left hand trembles violently. She lifts it, lets everyone see. You're right. I have nerve damage. Shrapnel injury, radial nerve left arm. Medically disqualified from flight status 3 years ago. Griffin seizes on this C. She just admitted she's not cleared to fly. But I can still fly better with one good hand. Clementine continues, her voice steady, than most pilots can with two. The plane drops. Hard. 300 feet in 2 seconds. Passengers scream. Loose items fly. The overhead bins rattle. And when the plane levels out, shaking, groaning but level, Clementine is still standing. Balanced. Centered. Like she expected it. Everyone else is gripping their armrest, white-knuckled. Ronan speaks from his seat. That woman's telling the truth. I flew Hueys in Vietnam. I know a combat pilot when I see one. Mrs. Edith Merrill, the retired professor in 6C, calls out, but she's so young, and she doesn't even have a uniform. Ma'am? Ronan says, his voice hard with authority. The best pilots I ever flew with wore flight suits covered in oil and blood. The worst wore pressed uniforms and medals they didn't earn. Don't judge her by what she's wearing. Judge her by whether she can save your life. The cockpit door opens wider. Sawyer steps fully into the doorway. His face is pale sweat, beading on his forehead. Ma'am? Are you really Air Force? Clementine reaches into her hoodie pocket, pulls out the cloth-wrapped bundle, unwraps it slowly. A dog tag, stainless steel, stamped text, Foster Clementine USAF 05 WRAITH. She hands it to Sawyer. He reads it again, looks up at her eyes wide. You're a lieutenant colonel, was, Clementine says. Medically retired, but the training doesn't go away. Cassius snatches the dog tag from Sawyer's hand, studies it. This proves nothing. You can buy these online. Stolen Valor. The plane shudders again. The lights flicker. And somewhere deep in the airframe, a sound like a gunshot. Everyone freezes. Sawyer's face goes from pale to gray. That was... Oh God, that was the hydraulic system. We just lost hydraulic system Alpha. He looks at Clementine. Did you know that was going to happen? Clementine nods. Overpressure from turbulence. The system's been weakening for the last 6 minutes. You've got maybe 90 seconds before you lose flight control augmentation. How do you know that? Because I've flown aircraft with worse damage than this, under enemy fire, and brought them home. Sawyer makes a decision, steps aside. Get in the cockpit, please. Cassius blocks the doorway. Absolutely not. I will not allow. If you're watching this, and you can feel the tension building, if you want to see what happens, when Clementine finally proves who she really is, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because the next 30 minutes of this flight are going to redefine everything you thought you knew about courage under pressure. Now back to the story. Ronan stands. All 6'2" of him, Vietnam vet muscle still solid under the old man exterior. He walks up behind Cassius, places one hand on his shoulder. Son, you're going to sit down now. Cassius tries to shrug him off. Don't touch me. Ronan's grip tightens, not painful, but unmistakable. I said sit, down. Cassius sits. Clementine steps into the cockpit. The door closes behind her, and the passengers are left in the shaking cabin, wondering if they just made the best decision of their lives, or the last mistake. Inside the cockpit, Clementine's eyes scan the instrument panel in 2 seconds. Airspeed indicator, altimeter, vertical speed, heading, engine parameters, fuel flow, hydraulic pressure gauges. System A reading 0. Captain Mitchell is slumped in the left seat unconscious. Dr. Iris is kneeling beside him, hands on his chest, counting compressions. 28, 29, 30. She tilts his head back, delivers 2 breaths into the oxygen mask covering his face. Sawyer is in the right seat, hands on the yoke knuckles white. The aircraft is shaking so violently that the instruments are blurring. He's fighting it, over-controlling, burning fuel and stressing the airframe. First Officer Blake. Clementine says, her voice calm despite the chaos. You need to stop fighting the turbulence. Sawyer doesn't take his eyes off the instruments. If I don't maintain altitude, you'll exhaust yourself and run out of fuel. Reduce power. Let the aircraft drift in the turbulence. Your autopilot is compensating, but you're overriding it. The autopilot can't handle this. Then disconnect it and hand fly, but stop fighting. Sawyer finally looks at her. Sweat is dripping into his eyes. Who are you? Someone who's done this before. Clementine moves to the observer's seat, a jump seat behind the co-pilot position. Straps in. I'm not taking your aircraft, but I can guide you. You're still pilot in command. I'm just backup. Sawyer hesitates. The plane drops again. His stomach lurches. Okay, what do I do? First, tell me your name. Sawyer. Sawyer Blake. Sawyer, how many hours do you have in type 800 in the 777? How many of those were as pilot in command? 0. I've always had a captain. Clementine nods, expected. And how many single pilot approaches have you done in severe weather? Sawyer's silence is the answer. The cockpit door bursts open. Cassius Thatcher forces his way in, shoving past Amethyst. This is insane. You're letting an unqualified vagrant into the cockpit while... Sir, get out, Sawyer says, but his voice lacks authority. Cassius points at Clementine. She has no credentials, no license visible, no uniform, and her hand is shaking like she's having a seizure. You're going to trust her. Clementine holds up her left hand, lets him see the tremor. You're right. Nerve damage. Permanent. But watch. She reaches across with her left hand, trembling violently, and flips a switch on the overhead panel, the backup hydraulic pump. Her hand shakes the entire time, but the movement is precise. Exact. The hydraulic pressure gauge for System B ticks upward. You still have System B, Clementine says to Sawyer. It'll give you enough control authority to land. But you need to configure for manual reversion. Pull up the checklist. Cassius grabs her shoulder. Nobody asked you. Clementine's right hand moves faster than he can track. She grips his wrist, rotates it outward. Not violently, but with clinical efficiency. Cassius gasps, his fingers going numb. "Mr. Thatcher," she says quietly, "I spent 6 years in close quarters combat training. If you touch me again, I will dislocate your shoulder. Understand?" She releases him. He stumbles backward, cradling his wrist. Dr. Iris glances up from CPR. "Captain Mitchell is stable, barely. But I need to get him to a hospital in 15 minutes, or we're going to lose him." Sawyer looks at the navigation display. Denver is still 120 miles away. At their current speed, that's 18 minutes. We won't make it. "There's another option," Clementine says. "Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base, bearing 21078 miles, military field, long runway, emergency equipment, and they'll clear us no matter what." "That's restricted airspace," Sawyer says. "They won't let a civilian aircraft. They will if I ask." Sawyer stares at her. "You're serious. You're actually Air Force." "I told you. But you don't have credentials." Clementine reaches into her jeans pocket, pulls out a challenge coin, sets it on the center console where Sawyer can see it. The coin is worn, the edges rubbed smooth, but the engraving is clear. 22nd Fighter Squadron, WRAITH, USAF. Sawyer picks it up, turns it over. On the reverse side, "Return with honor." "That's a squadron coin," Sawyer whispers. "You can't fake these." "No," Clementine says. "You can't." The cockpit door is still open. In the cabin beyond Griffin, Donovan is shouting, "She's lying. That coin is probably from eBay." "Sawyer, don't listen to her." "Let me in there. I can help." Vanessa is still filming. "This is negligence. Criminal negligence. I'm recording everything for the FAA." Mrs. Merrill's voice. "She's too young to be a colonel. It doesn't make sense." Amethyst tries to close the door, but Cassius blocks it with his foot. First Officer Blake. "I'm invoking my rights as a passenger to demand you follow FAA regulations. That woman is not on the crew manifest. She has no authority. Remove her immediately, or I will file a formal complaint with the aircraft drops 300 feet in 1 second. The G-force pins everyone against their seats." Sawyer gasps, hauls back on the yoke, arrests the descent, but now they're climbing through severe turbulence, burning fuel, and the stall warning shaker starts vibrating the yoke. "Power back," Clementine shouts. "You're over-rotating. Push forward now." Sawyer shoves the yoke forward. The nose drops. The airspeed stabilizes. The shaker stops. Silence in the cockpit except for the storm hammering the windscreen. Sawyer is shaking worse than Clementine's left hand. "I almost stalled us." "But you didn't," Clementine says, "because you listened. Now listen again. That civilian with 300 hours in a Cessna, if you let him in this cockpit, everyone on this plane dies. Do you understand?" Sawyer nods. Doesn't speak. Can't. Cassius tries one more time. "This is illegal." Clementine looks directly at him. "Mr. Thatcher, in about 90 seconds, we're going to lose our primary navigation system. When that happens, we'll be flying on backup instruments through a storm that has already killed 2 aircraft tonight. If you want to survive, you need to get out of this cockpit, sit down, and let the adults work." "I'm not..." The radar screen goes black. Every eye in the cockpit snaps to it. Sawyer's voice breaks. "Primary weather radar it's gone. It just failed." "Secondary GPS?" Clementine asks. Sawyer checks the display. "Intermittent. We're losing satellite lock. Backup instruments. Still online for now." Clementine looks at Cassius. "Still want to debate my credentials?" Cassius backs out of the cockpit. Says nothing. Amethyst closes the door, locks it. In the cabin, the passengers sit in stunned silence. They can't see what's happening in the cockpit, but they can hear the tone in Sawyer's voice over the PA when he keys the mic, "Denver Center Flight 447. We've lost primary weather radar and are experiencing GPS navigation degradation. Request vectors for Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base emergency diversion. Static. Then, Flight 4047. Cheyenne Mountain is restricted military airspace. We cannot approve. Clementine takes the microphone from Sawyer's hand, keys it. Denver Center. This is Lieutenant Colonel Clementine Foster, United States Air Force call sign. WRAITH requesting emergency priority access to Cheyenne Mountain under military emergency authority. The silence on the radio stretches 5 seconds. Then a different voice. Older, male, precise. WRAITH, say again your call sign and service number. Clementine closes her eyes. This is the moment. If they don't verify her, they're dead. WRAITH, service number Alpha Foxtrot 2847. Delta, authorization code Echo Sierra 779er. 10 seconds of silence. Sawyer is staring at her. Dr. Iris has stopped CPR to listen. Then, WRAITH, this is Colonel Ezra Callahan, Cheyenne Mountain, AFB. Clementine Foster, service number AF2847 Delta, confirmed. You were listed as MIA presumed KIA Afghanistan 2019. How are you alive? Clementine exhales slowly. Long story, sir. Right now I need that runway. WRAITH, you're cleared. Runway 21. ILS available emergency equipment standing by. Welcome home, Colonel. In the cabin, the passengers heard everything. Cassius sits in his seat, head in his hands. Griffin stares at the cockpit door, mouth open. Vanessa stops recording, deletes the video, starts crying, and Ronan Sullivan, Vietnam veteran, smiles for the first time since boarding. The radio crackles again. WRAITH, be advised, weather at Cheyenne Mountain is deteriorating. Winds 280 at 30 gusting 45. Visibility 1 mile in moderate snow. Ceiling 500 overcast. ILS approach available, but you'll be at minimums. Clementine keys the mic. Copy all. Requesting current fuel advisory for descent and approach. Sawyer checks the fuel gauges. We're showing 7,200 pounds. That's maybe 35 minutes at current consumption. Distance to Cheyenne, Clementine asks. 78 nautical miles. She does the math in her head. At their current ground speed, accounting for headwinds, that's 22 minutes of flying, plus descent, plus approach. We're cutting it close. How close? If we don't get the approach right on the first try, we won't have fuel for a go-around. Sawyer's face drains of color. One approach, one chance. That's right. Dr. Iris speaks from behind them, her voice tight. Captain Mitchell's heart rhythm is unstable. If we don't get him on the ground in 20 minutes, he's not going to make it. Clementine glances back. The doctor's hands are still on Mitchell's chest, maintaining compressions, but her arms are shaking with exhaustion. How long have you been doing CPR? 12 minutes. You need a break. There's no one else qualified. Amethyst has basic life support training, Clementine says. Switch off with her every 2 minutes. You'll last longer. Dr. Iris nods, calls through the door for Amethyst. The plane drops again. Not turbulence this time. The number 2 engine coughs. The EGT exhaust gas temperature spikes red. Sawyer's eyes go wide. Engine 2 is surging. Ice in the intake. Clementine checks the anti-ice systems. You've got anti-ice on max? Yes, but it's not keeping up. We're accumulating faster than we can shed. Then we need to descend, get below the icing layer. Denver Center hasn't cleared us yet. Sawyer, in 30 seconds that engine is going to flame out. When it does, we're single engine in a thunderstorm with no radar, intermittent GPS, and 1 hydraulic system. If you wait for ATC clearance, we die. So declare an emergency and descend. Now. Sawyer hesitates. 2 seconds. 3. Then, Denver Center Flight 447 declaring emergency. Descending immediately to flight level 250 due to severe icing. Flight 447 unable to approve descent below flight level 280 due to terrain. Clementine takes the mic. Denver Center WRAITH. We're descending. Approve it or don't, but we're going down. She reaches past, Sawyer pulls the throttles back and pushes the yoke forward. The nose drops. The aircraft enters a descent, Woodcow 500 feet per minute, clean and controlled. WRAITH Denver Center, you're cleared. Emergency descent approved. Advise when level at flight level 250. Copy. The Engine 2 EGT starts dropping as they descend into warmer air. The ice begins to shed. But the damage is done. The engine is running rough, vibrating the entire airframe. Sawyer checks the parameters. It's barely producing thrust. If it fails completely, then we land single engine, Clementine says. It's doable. Have you ever done it in an F-22? Yes. In a 777? She pauses. No. But the physics are the same. Sawyer laughs. A short, hysterical bark. The physics are the same. Oh my God. Sawyer, look at me. He does. We're going to get through this, Clementine says, but I need you focused. Can you do that? He nods, doesn't speak, but his hands steady on the yoke. Behind them, Dr. Iris and Amethyst switch places, fresh arms on Captain Mitchell's chest. The rhythm of compressions continues steady as a metronome. And on the navigation display, Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base appears as a green icon, 70 miles away, 20 minutes of flying. One approach, no margin for error. The descent smooths out at flight level 250. They're below the worst of the icing, but the turbulence hasn't stopped. The plane still shudders every 10 seconds like driving over railroad ties. Sawyer is calling out checklists. Single engine approach checklist. Hydraulic system B configuration. Manual reversion backup procedures. Clementine watches him work. He's methodical, precise, trained well. But there's a gap between training and experience, the kind of gap that gets people killed in emergencies. Sawyer, let me ask you something, she says. Yeah. When you did your simulator training for single-engine approaches, what was the weather? Clear skies, light winds, perfect visibility. And how many times did you practice manual reversion? Twice. Both times in calm conditions. Clementine nods. Okay. So here's what's about to happen. When we configure for landing, we're going to get asymmetric thrust from the good engine. That's going to want to yaw the aircraft. You'll need full rudder left rudder to keep us aligned with the runway. Your leg is going to cramp. It's going to hurt. But if you ease off that rudder, we'll skid sideways and crash. Sawyer swallows. How do you know my leg will cramp? Because mine did. The first time I landed a damaged F-22 at Bagram with one engine out and hydraulic failure. I held full rudder for 9 minutes. When I finally got out of the cockpit, I collapsed. Couldn't walk for an hour. And you still made the landing. Obviously, I'm here. A ghost of a smile crosses Sawyer's face. Okay. Full rudder, don't ease off. Good. Now fuel flow. How much are we burning right now? Sawyer checks the display. 1,200 pounds per hour. At this rate, we've got 28 minutes. And time to Cheyenne. 17 minutes to initial approach fix. Another 6 minutes for the approach itself. That's 23 minutes total. 5-minute reserve, Clementine says. Not much, but enough. What if we have to go around? We don't. But if we do, we don't. Clementine repeats her voice flat. Because if we go around, we'll flame out over the Rockies and crash into a mountain. So we're landing on the first approach. Period. Sawyer's hands tighten on the yoke. No pressure. The PA system crackles. Clementine realizes they need to update the passengers. She takes the microphone keys it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Lieutenant Colonel Clementine Foster. I'm assisting First Officer Blake with navigation and approach procedures. We're currently 17 minutes from landing at Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Base. Weather conditions are challenging but manageable. We will be conducting a single-engine approach, which may feel different from a normal landing. There will be more engine noise, and the aircraft may not feel completely stable. This is normal. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened and follow all instructions from the flight attendants. We will get you on the ground safely. She releases the mic. In the cabin, the reaction is mixed. Some passengers look relieved finally, someone who sounds like they know what they're doing. Others are still skeptical. Cassius Thatcher sits with his arms crossed, jaw clenched. Vanessa has her head in her hands. Griffin is staring at the cockpit door like he's trying to see through it. But Ronan Sullivan catches Felicity Kane's eye, the 8-year-old, with the stuffed penguin, and gives her a thumbs up. She smiles, weakly returns it. The radio crackles. WRAITH Cheyenne approach control. We have you on radar 72 miles northeast. Current altimeter 2985. Winds 280 at 32 gusting 47. Runway 21. ILS frequency 109.9. You're cleared direct to the initial approach fix Brass intersection. Descend and maintain 10,000. WRAITH copies. Direct Brass descend and maintain 10,000. Sawyer sets the altitude selector, begins the descent. The aircraft noses down, picking up speed. The turbulence intensifies as they drop into thicker air. And then bang. The number 2 engine explodes. Not literally, but the compressor stalls with a sound like a shotgun blast. The EGT spikes into the red. The fire warning light illuminates bright, insistent screaming for attention. Sawyer's voice cracks. Engine fire, number 2. Clementine's hand is already moving. She reaches across, pulls the number 2 fire handle, rotates it. The fuel supply cuts off. The fire suppression system discharges. 10 seconds later, the fire light goes out. But the engine is dead. They're flying on one engine now. For real. Single engine. 70 miles from the runway. Fuel for maybe 25 minutes. And weather that's getting worse by the second. Sawyer is breathing too fast. Hyperventilating. His hands shake on the yoke, overcorrecting every minor deviation. The aircraft yaws right asymmetric thrust from the single operating engine, and he slams the rudder pedals, overcompensates yaws left. Sawyer, stop, Clementine says. Her voice cuts through his panic. You're over-controlling. Gentle inputs, small corrections. The aircraft wants to fly straight. Let it. We're going to crash. No, we're not. Look at me. He doesn't. Sawyer, look at me. He tears his eyes from the instruments, meets hers. Breathe, she says. 4 counts in, hold 2, 6 counts out. Do it with me. She breathes slowly, deliberately. He mirrors her. Once, twice, 3 times. His hands steady. Not perfect, but better. Good, Clementine says. Now trim the rudder. Use the trim wheel left rudder trim until the yaw stabilizes. You won't have to push as hard. Sawyer's right hand finds the trim wheel, rotates it. The pressure on his left leg eases. The aircraft steadies. There you go, Clementine says. You're flying it, not fighting it. Behind them, Dr. Iris is still doing compressions on Captain Mitchell. Amethyst kneels beside her, counting 28, 29, 30. They switch. Amethyst takes over hands on Mitchell's sternum, pushing hard enough to crack ribs if she's not careful. The door to the cockpit rattles, someone pounding from the cabin side. Open this door. Cassius Thatcher's voice muffled but furious. You have no right to lock paying passengers out. We have a right to know what's happening. Clementine ignores him. Cheyenne approach WRAITH. Single engine operation confirmed. Request priority handling and emergency equipment on standby. WRAITH Cheyenne. Copy single engine. All emergency equipment is already positioned. Fire trucks, ambulances, and foam on the runway. You're cleared for immediate approach, no delay. Advise fuel remaining. Sawyer checks the gauge. 6,100 pounds. Clementine does the math. At single-engine fuel burn 1,500 pounds per hour, they have 24 minutes. Distance to the runway, 65 miles. Time required 15 minutes of flying, plus the approach itself, another 6 minutes. 21 minutes total. 3-minute reserve. Cheyenne approach WRAITH. Fuel state 6.1. We're committed. No go-around capability. A pause on the radio. Then, WRAITH understood. You get one chance. Make it count. The pounding on the door intensifies. Griffin Donovan's voice joins Cassius. First Officer Blake. You are in violation of FAA regulations by allowing unauthorized personnel in the cockpit. The cabin PA system activates. Ronan Sullivan has taken a flight attendant's handset. His voice, gravelly and hard, echoes through the plane. Everyone in this cabin needs to shut up and sit down. Right now. That woman in the cockpit is the only reason we're still alive. If you don't trust her, that's your problem. But if you keep distracting her, you'll kill all of us. So sit, down, and shut up. The pounding stops. Clementine glances back at Sawyer. Good man, that one. WRAITH Cheyenne approach. Descend and maintain 8,000. You're 10 miles from Brass intersection. After Brass, turn right, heading 210. Intercept the localizer for runway 21. WRAITH descend and maintain 8,000 right turn 210 after Brass. Sawyer sets the altitude, begins the descent. The turbulence is worse at lower altitude. The plane bucks and shakes. Outside the windscreen, visibility drops to near zero. Snow streaks horizontally across the glass, driven by 50-knot winds. I can't see anything, Sawyer says. You don't need to see. You need to trust your instruments. Airspeed, altitude, heading, glide slope. That's all that matters. But if the GPS fails, then we use the ILS. And if the ILS fails, we use the compass and the clock. I've landed on dirt strips in zero visibility with nothing but a handheld GPS and a prayer. This is luxury. The hydraulic warning light illuminates. System B pressure dropping. Sawyer's voice goes up an octave. We're losing the other hydraulic system. No. Clementine says, checking the gauges. It's just fluctuating. You've still got pressure. It'll hold. How do you know? Because if it was really failing, you'd feel it in the controls. The yoke would get heavy, sluggish. You feel that? Sawyer tests the yoke. It moves normally. No. Then it's fine. Keep flying. The radio. WRAITH turn right, heading 210. Intercept the localizer. You're cleared ILS runway 21 approach. Contact tower on 118.3. Clementine switches frequencies. Cheyenne Tower WRAITH with you on the ILS 21. WRAITH Cheyenne Tower. Winds 270 at 35, gusting 50. Visibility 1 mile. Runway 21, cleared to land. Emergency equipment is in position. Cleared to land, runway 21. Sawyer's leg is shaking on the rudder pedal. The constant pressure holding full left rudder to counter the asymmetric thrust is exhausting. His calf muscle is cramping. My leg, he gasps. I know, Clementine says. Hold it. 2 more minutes. You can do this. The localizer needle centers. They're aligned with the runway. Somewhere ahead, invisible in the snow, is the only piece of pavement that matters. Gear down, Clementine says. Sawyer reaches for the gear lever, hesitates. If we put the gear down and have to go around, we're not going around. Gear down now. He drops the gear. 3 green lights, locked and down. The aircraft slows, the drag increasing. The single engine roars, struggling to maintain speed. Flaps 15, Clementine says. Sawyer sets flaps. The plane pitches nose down. He corrects hauls back on the yoke. Airspeed 160, Clementine calls. Sync rate 700 feet per minute. Glide slope centered. You're doing perfect, Sawyer. I can't hold the rudder much longer. Yes, you can. 1 more minute. The altimeter winds down. 3,000 feet, 2,000, 1,500. The glide slope needle starts drifting high. They're descending too fast. Power up, Clementine says. Small increase. Don't overdo it. Sawyer adds power. The descent rate slows. 1,000 feet. Still no visual on the runway. 800 feet. Nothing but snow and darkness. 600 feet. Sawyer's voice cracks. I can't see the runway. You will. Keep flying the needles. 400 feet. And then lights. Faint, blurred by snow, but unmistakable. The approach lights for runway 2 won a string of white diamonds leading to salvation. Runway in sight, Sawyer breathes. Don't look at it, Clementine says. Eyes on the instruments until 200 feet, then transition to visual. 200 feet, Sawyer's eyes lift from the instruments to the windscreen. The runway is there wet, covered in foam, emergency vehicles lining both sides. 100 feet, 50 feet. The stall warning chirps, airspeed decaying. Hold it, Clementine says. 30 feet, 20, 10. The main gear touches, firm, hard, but controlled. Sawyer slams the thrust reverser. The single engine screams in protest. The nose gear drops. All 3 wheels on the pavement. Brakes, maximum brakes, Clementine shouts. Sawyer stands on the brake pedals. The anti-skid system pulses. The tires scream. Smoke pours from the wheel wells. They're decelerating. But the end of the runway is approaching fast. 2,000 feet remaining. 1,500. The aircraft stops. 300 feet from the runway end. Silence. Except for the wind. And the hail hammering the fuselage. And Captain Mitchell's labored breathing as Dr. Iris finally stops compressions, checks his pulse, and says, he's got a rhythm. Weak, but he's alive. Sawyer collapses against his seat, sobbing, not from fear, from relief. Clementine unbuckles, stands on shaking legs. Her left hand is cramping now, tremors turning into full spasms. She hides it in her hoodie pocket. Outside, emergency vehicles swarm the aircraft. Inside the cabin, applause erupts, screaming, crying, passengers hugging each other, and through the cockpit door, Clementine can hear Cassius Thatcher's voice. I want to speak to whoever's in charge. I want an investigation into Ronan Sullivan's voice cuts him off. Sit down, son, or I'll sit you down. Clementine allows herself a small smile. They're alive. All 312 of them. So here's the question, and I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have trusted Clementine Foster to take control of that cockpit? Would you have believed her, or would you have sided with the passengers who thought she was a fraud? Drop your answer below because Part 2 is about to reveal exactly why the United States Air Force has been looking for her for 3 years and what she's been hiding this whole time. Clementine steps out of the cockpit. The cabin is chaos. But as she walks down the aisle toward the exit, passengers part like water. Some reach out to touch her arm, to thank her. Others just stare. And Cassius Thatcher sits in his seat, head in his hands, knowing his life just changed forever. The jetway connects with a metallic thunk. The aircraft door opens, and cold air rushes in sharp clean, carrying the smell of snow and jet fuel. Outside, emergency vehicles circle with lights flashing red and blue across the foam-covered runway. Paramedics board first. 2 teams. One for Captain Mitchell, who's unconscious but breathing. Dr. Iris briefs them rapidly. Cardiac arrest, 14 minutes of CPR rhythm restored 3 minutes ago. He needs a cath lab immediately. They load him onto a stretcher IV lines already running and disappear down the jetway at a run. The second team approaches Clementine, a young medic with Taurus on his jacket. Ma'am, are you injured? She's leaning against the galley wall, left hand still hidden in her hoodie pocket. Her face is gray with exhaustion. I'm fine. You don't look fine. Let me check your vitals. I said I'm fine. Her voice carries enough edge that he backs off. Sawyer appears from the cockpit still in his uniform shirt soaked through with sweat. He sees Clementine crosses the galley in 3 steps and pulls her into a hug. She stiffens, not used to being touched, but doesn't pull away. "You saved us," he says into her shoulder. "All of us." "You flew it," Clementine corrects. "I just talked you through it." "Bullshit." He steps back, wipes his eyes. "I would have killed everyone if you hadn't been here." Before she can respond, a voice from the jetway. Lieutenant Colonel Foster. A man in an Air Force dress uniform strides onto the aircraft, silver eagles on his shoulders, ribbons covering his chest, late 50s gray at the temples, eyes sharp as broken glass. Clementine straightens instinctively. Old habits. "Colonel Callahan." "It's been a long time, Wraith." He offers his hand. She shakes it right hand only. "Last time I saw you, we were pulling your ejection seat out of a crater outside Kandahar. I remember. You were supposed to be dead. I got better." Callahan's mouth twitches. Almost a smile. "Pentagon's been looking for you for 3 years. You disappeared after your medical discharge. No forwarding address, no phone, nothing. I wanted to be left alone. Well, that's over now." He gestures toward the jetway. "We need to debrief you. Full after-action report. And then we need to talk about your future." "I don't have a future with the Air Force. I was medically retired." Things change. Callahan glances at the passengers deplaning behind them. Cassius Thatcher is being escorted off by airport security, still arguing. Vanessa Chandler follows head-down phone clutched in her hand. Griffin Donovan exits without a word, avoiding eye contact with everyone. But Ronan Sullivan stops in front of Clementine, extends his hand. "Ma'am, it was an honor flying with you." She shakes his hand. "Thank you for backing me up in there." "Didn't do it for you," Ronan says. "Did it because you were right, and because I'm tired of watching people underestimate warriors." He taps the brim of his Vietnam veteran's cap, then walks off the plane. Felicity Kane, the 8-year-old with the stuffed penguin, is the last passenger. Her grandmother is waiting in the jetway, but Felicity stops, looks up at Clementine. "Will you fly again?" Clementine kneels so they're eye level. "I don't know, sweetheart." "I hope you do. You're really good at it." She hands Clementine a folded piece of paper, a crayon drawing of an airplane with a stick figure in the cockpit. The figure has a smile and a speech bubble. "You're safe now." Clementine takes the drawing, folds it carefully, puts it in her pocket. "Thank you, Felicity." The little girl runs to her grandmother, and Clementine is left standing in the empty cabin with Sawyer Amethyst, Colonel Callahan, and the lingering smell of fear and survival. "Wraith," Callahan says. "Time to go." She follows him off the plane. They walk through the military terminal gray walls. Fluorescent lights the smell of coffee and floor wax. Clementine keeps her left hand in her pocket, but the tremor is worse now. Adrenaline wearing off. The nerve damage always gets worse after stress. Callahan notices. He always notices. "Your hand. Still broken? The medical board said you'd never fly again." "They were wrong." He stops walking, turns to face her. "Clementine, what you did tonight, single-engine approach and zero visibility with manual reversion, that's not just flying. That's art. The kind of skill we can't train, can't simulate, can't replace." "It's also illegal," she says. "I'm not certified, not current. The FAA is going to have questions." "The FAA can get in line." Callahan pulls a phone from his pocket, dials, puts it on speaker. It rings twice. A woman's voice answers, "This is General Hayes." "General, this is Colonel Callahan at Cheyenne Mountain. I have Lieutenant Colonel Foster with me." A pause. Then, "Clementine Foster Wraith." "Yes, ma'am," Clementine says. "Colonel Foster, I watched the radar track of your approach. I've been flying for 30 years. I've never seen anything like that. You threaded a single-engine 777 through conditions that would have killed most pilots." "Thank you, ma'am." "Don't thank me yet. We need to talk." But first, Colonel Callahan is their media present. Callahan glances toward the terminal entrance. Through the glass doors, news vans are visible. Satellite trucks, cameras. Affirmative, at least a dozen outlets. Keep her away from them. This story is going to explode, and I want us controlling the narrative. Get her to a secure location. I'll be there in 90 minutes. Copy that. The call ends. Clementine looks at Callahan. What narrative? The one where the Air Force didn't make a mistake when they discharged you. The one where we're not idiots for letting go of one of the best combat pilots in a generation. He leads her down a side corridor away from the main terminal. They pass offices, briefing rooms, a small cafeteria. At the end of the hall, a conference room with a table, chairs, and a coffee maker that looks like it survived the Cold War. Wait here, Callahan says. I'll get you some food. When's the last time you ate? Clementine has to think. Yesterday morning. Maybe. He shakes his head. Leaves. She sits. Pulls the challenge coin from her pocket. Sets it on the table. The metal catches the light-worn edges' scratched surface, but the engraving still clear. 22nd Fighter Squadron. WRAITH. She hasn't carried this coin in 3 years. Wrapped it in cloth, buried it at the bottom of her bag, tried to forget what it represented. But tonight when Sawyer needed proof, her hand went straight to it. Muscle memory, like flying. Some things you don't forget. The door opens. Not Callahan. A different officer, younger female captain's bars. She's carrying a tablet. Colonel Foster. Clementine stands. Yes. I'm Captain Meredith Lang, Public Affairs. I need to brief you on the media situation. She sets the tablet on the table, opens a news feed. The headline, Mystery Pilot Saves 312 Lives in Impossible Landing. Below it a photo grainy taken from someone's phone through an aircraft window. Clementine's profile visible in the cockpit during the approach. The caption, Unidentified woman commandeers commercial flight, executes emergency landing. That's from Vanessa Chandler's social media, Captain Lang says. Posted 14 minutes ago. It already has 2 million views. Clementine scrolls. More headlines. Who is the hero pilot? Air Force confirms. Mysterious savior is decorated. Veteran passengers say they doubted her until she saved their lives. There's video. Shaky footage from inside the cabin. Audio of Cassius Thatcher. She has no business in the cockpit. Look at her. Then another clip. The PA system. Clementine's voice calm and steady. We will get you on the ground safely. The comment section is exploding. She was homeless and they treated her like garbage. This is why you don't judge people by their clothes. AIR Force, bring her back. Captain Lang closes the tablet. Ma'am, the Pentagon wants you for a press conference. Secretary of Defense is personally requesting your presence in D.C. tomorrow morning. I don't do press conferences. With respect, Colonel, you don't have a choice anymore. You're the story, and the Air Force needs this story. We've been hemorrhaging recruitment numbers for 3 years. You, a combat veteran, presumed dead, coming back to save civilians. This is exactly the kind of narrative that rebuilds public trust. I'm not a narrative. I'm a person. Tonight, you're both. Callahan returns with a tray sandwich, coffee, bottled water. He sees Captain Lang, frowns. Meredith, give us the room. Sir, the general said. I don't care what the general said. Out. She leaves. Callahan sets the tray in front of Clementine. Eat. She doesn't. They want to use me. They want to recognize you. There's a difference. Is there? He sits across from her. Clementine, 3 years ago, you disappeared because you couldn't handle being broken. Couldn't handle being the pilot who got grounded. But tonight you proved that being broken doesn't mean being useless. You proved that the medical board was wrong, that we were wrong. You weren't wrong. I still can't pass a flight physical. But you can fly. And right now, that's all that matters. She finally picks up the sandwich, takes a bite, Hasn't realized how hungry she is until the food hits her system. Callahan watches her eat. The Air Force wants you back, Wraith, not as a broken pilot, as a trainer, as someone who teaches the next generation what you did tonight. I'll think about it. You've got 24 hours. The door bursts open. No knock, no warning. 2 men in suits, FBI badges clipped to their belts. Behind them, an FAA inspector with a briefcase and an expression like he's here to ruin someone's life. Lieutenant Colonel Clementine Foster, the lead agent says. Yes. I'm Special Agent Marcus Reed, FBI. This is Agent Lynn and Inspector Wallace from the FAA. We need to ask you some questions about tonight's incident. Callahan stands. She just landed 30 minutes ago. She needs rest. Colonel Callahan, with respect, this is a federal investigation. We have multiple passengers claiming that Ms. Foster. Colonel Foster Callahan corrects sharply that Colonel Foster took control of a commercial aircraft without proper certification or authorization. We have video evidence of her admitting to medical disqualification, and we have testimony that she physically assaulted a passenger. Clementine sets down the sandwich. I defended myself when Mr. Thatcher grabbed me. That's not assault. That's for a judge to determine, Agent Reed says. He pulls out a chair, sits uninvited. Let's start with the basics. When's the last time you held a valid FAA pilot certificate? I don't have one. I flew military aircraft, different certification. And your military flight status, revoked, medical discharge 2022. Inspector Wallace flips open his briefcase, pulls out a thick folder. According to your FAA file, you've never held a civilian pilot certificate, which means tonight you were operating an aircraft without a license. That's a federal offense. 5 years in prison, up to $250,000 in fines. Clementine doesn't blink. I saved 312 lives. You violated federal aviation regulations, Wallace says. Intention doesn't matter. The law is the law. Agent Lynn speaks for the first time. We also have concerns about your fitness to fly. Multiple witnesses report that your hand was shaking throughout the flight. One passenger, Griffin Donovan, claims you appeared to be having a seizure. I have nerve damage, not a seizure disorder. Can you provide medical documentation? Not without calling my doctor, and it's midnight. Wallace leans forward. Colonel Foster hears the situation. We have video evidence, passenger testimony, and your own admission that you were medically unqualified. The FAA is prepared to file charges. The FBI is investigating potential fraud and assault, and the airline is considering a civil lawsuit. Callahan slams his hand on the table. This is bullshit. She saved everyone on that plane. Doesn't matter, Wallace interrupts. Regulations exist for a reason. If we allow people to ignore them just because the outcome was positive, the entire system collapses. Clementine's left hand cramps under the table. She grits her teeth, waits for it to pass. So, what do you want from me? Agent Reed pulls out a digital recorder, sets it on the table. A full statement. Everything you did, everything you said, everyone you interacted with. And then we'll determine if charges are warranted. The door opens again. This time, it's Captain Lang. Inspector Wallace, I have General Patricia Hayes on the line for you. She says it's urgent. Wallace frowns. Tell her I'll call back. She says if you don't take this call, she's contacting the Attorney General personally. Wallace's face goes pale. He stands, leaves the room. Agent Reed looks uncomfortable. General Hayes, Pentagon Callahan says, with a thin smile. 4-star. She runs Air Force Personnel Command, and she really doesn't like people who waste her time. Reed exchanges a glance with Lynn. They stand. We'll be back. They leave. Clementine exhales slowly. That was close. It's not over, Callahan says. Wallace is right about one thing: you broke federal law. Even with a general running interference, the FAA could still prosecute. So what do I do? You let the Air Force handle it. We take care of our own. I'm not Air Force anymore. Callahan picks up her challenge coin from the table, sets it back in front of her. Yes, you are. You just forgot for a while. Inspector Wallace returns. His face is no longer pale, it's red. Angry red. The kind of red that comes from being chewed out by someone with more stars than you have years of service. Colonel Foster, he says tightly. General Hayes has clarified certain aspects of tonight's incident, such as the fact that under Title 10, Section 9233 of the U.S. Code, military officers retain emergency command authority over civilian aircraft during national security situations. Clementine blinks. I didn't know that statute existed. Neither did I, Wallace admits. Apparently it was written in 1952 and hasn't been invoked since 1974, but General Hayes assures me it's still valid. Callahan is trying not to smile. So Colonel Foster acted within legal authority. According to the Pentagon's legal counsel, yes. Wallace closes his briefcase with more force than necessary. However, the FAA will still be conducting a full investigation into the airline's decision to allow an uncertified individual into the cockpit. First Officer Blake made that call, Clementine says. If anyone's getting investigated, it should be me, not him. First Officer Blake followed emergency protocols, Wallace says. He requested assistance from qualified personnel. You claim to be qualified. That makes you responsible. Agent Reed stands. Inspector, we need to discuss. The door opens again. This time it's not Captain Lang. It's Dr. Iris Kaimana, still in her civilian clothes now stained with Captain Mitchell's blood. Behind her, Sawyer Blake, Amethyst Torres, and Ronan Sullivan. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Iris says, but we heard there was an investigation, and we wanted to make a statement. Wallace sighs. Ma'am, witness statements should be conducted individually. I don't care about procedure, Dr. Iris says. Her surgeon's authority cuts through the room like a scalpel. I'm here to tell you that Colonel Foster's actions were not only legal, they were the only reason Captain Mitchell is alive. She recognized his symptoms, directed CPR, and got us on the ground before he coded completely. As a physician, I'm prepared to testify that her medical judgment saved his life. Sawyer steps forward. And as the pilot in command of Flight 447, I'm prepared to testify that without Colonel Foster's guidance, I would have crashed. I had zero experience with single-engine approaches in those conditions. She walked me through every step. She didn't take control. She gave me the tools to maintain control. Amethyst adds, the passengers were rioting. They were threatening to break down the cockpit door. Colonel Foster's presence, her calm, her authority, kept everyone from panicking. She saved lives before we even touched the ground. Ronan Sullivan speaks last. His voice is quiet, but it carries weight. Inspector, I flew 217 combat missions over Vietnam. I've seen good pilots and great pilots and a handful of legends. That woman, he points at Clementine, is a legend. And if your agency punishes her for saving lives, you'll have every veteran in this country on your doorstep. Wallace looks at Agent Reed. Reed looks at Agent Lynn. They're outnumbered, and they know it. We'll need to file our report, Wallace says finally. But given the circumstances and the testimony of the flight crew, I don't anticipate charges being filed. You're damn right you don't, Callahan says. Wallace and the FBI agents leave. The room exhales collectively. Clementine looks at the group standing in front of her. The doctor, the first officer, the flight attendant, the veteran. You didn't have to do that. Yes, we did, Dr. Iris says. You saved us. Now we're returning the favor. Sawyer extends his hand. Captain Foster, I owe you everything. If there's ever anything you need, anything at all, you call me. She shakes his hand. Just keep flying, Sawyer. You're good at it. Only because you showed me how. They file out, leaving Clementine alone with Callahan again. He's grinning. Title 10, Section 9233. I didn't know that existed either. Did General Hayes make it up? Probably, but Wallace won't check. He's too embarrassed. Clementine laughs. Actually laughs. First time in hours. So I'm not going to jail. Not today. What about tomorrow? Tomorrow you meet the Secretary of Defense. 6 hours later, Pentagon, Office of the Secretary of Defense. Clementine sits in a chair, designed to be uncomfortable hard leather, no armrest positioned, so the morning sun hits you directly in the eyes. Psychological tactics. She recognizes them because she's been trained in them. Secretary Thomas Brennan sits behind a desk the size of a small car. Late 60s. Gray suit, American flag pin on his lapel. He's flanked by General Hayes' 4-star sharp eyes, no-nonsense expression, and a civilian in a blazer who hasn't introduced himself, but radiates legal counsel. Colonel Foster, Brennan begins. Or should I say, Lieutenant Colonel, your records show a promotion that was never formally presented. I was discharged before the ceremony, sir. Yes, medical discharge. Nerve damage from combat injuries sustained during Operation Resolute Shield. He flips through a file. You were flying close air support when your F-22 took shrapnel from an IED. You lost hydraulics flight controls and suffered severe damage to your left arm. You still managed to deliver ordnance on target and land at Bagram Air Base. 15 soldiers owe their lives to you. I was doing my job. You were doing the impossible. Brennan closes the file. And then the medical board decided you couldn't fly anymore. Nerve damage, tremors, risk of catastrophic failure during critical flight phases. Yes, sir. Do you agree with their assessment? Clementine hesitates. This is a trap. Either answer gets her in trouble. I understood their reasoning. That's not what I asked. She meets his eyes. No, sir. I don't agree. I can still fly. I proved that last night. You certainly did. Brennan stands, walks to the window. The Pentagon parking lot stretches below acres of cars, thousands of people, all part of the machine. Colonel Foster, the Air Force, has a problem. We're losing experienced pilots faster than we can train new ones. Combat stress medical issues, disillusionment with military bureaucracy. We're hemorrhaging talent. I'm aware, sir. What you may not be aware of is that you're part of a larger pattern. Pilots with non-disqualifying injuries, PTSD, nerve damage, joint problems being medically retired even though they retain operational capability. We're throwing away expertise because we're prioritizing perfect health over perfect execution. General Hayes speaks, Colonel Foster, we want to change that, and we want you to help us. Clementine looks at her. How? We're creating a new training command. Specialized instruction for high-risk scenarios, single-engine failures, hydraulic malfunctions, manual reversion, extreme weather. The kind of situations that can't be properly simulated. We need instructors who've actually survived these conditions. Instructors who can teach not just the mechanics, but the mindset. You want me to teach? We want you to lead, Brennan says. Chief of Advanced Emergency Procedures, Nellis Air Force Base. Full reinstatement to active duty. Promotion to full colonel. And a waiver for your medical condition, because last night you proved that your condition doesn't impair your ability to save lives. Clementine's left hand trembles under the table. Sir, I appreciate the offer, but before you decline, Brennan interrupts, you should know that every major news outlet in the country is running your story. Mystery pilot saves 312 lives. The phones at Air Force recruiting stations have been ringing off the hook. Applications are up 40% in the last 6 hours. You've done more for Air Force morale in one night than every recruitment campaign we've run in the last decade. That's not why I flew last night. I know. That's exactly why we need you. He returns to his desk, pulls out a document, sets it in front of her. This is your reinstatement order. Signed by me. Countersigned by the president. Clementine stares at it. Her name. Her rank. The presidential seal. You don't have to decide right now, General Hayes says gently. But the Air Force needs you, Clementine. Not in spite of your injury. Because of it. Because you've proven that broken doesn't mean finished. Clementine picks up the pen. Her left hand shakes so badly she almost drops it. But her right hand is steady. She signs. The F-22's cockpit is on fire. Not literally, but the warning lights are so bright it might as well be. Master caution, hydraulic failure, flight control malfunction, overheat. The shriek of the stall warning pierces through her helmet. Below 15 American soldiers pinned down by enemy fire. They've been calling for close air support for 12 minutes. 12 minutes that feel like 12 hours when bullets are cutting through your team. WRAITH, this is ground team actual. If you can't deliver, we need immediate exfil. We're getting torn apart down here. Clementine's left arm is on fire. Actual fire this time. Shrapnel from the IED has torn through the cockpit, severed hydraulic lines, and shredded the flesh from her wrist to her elbow. She can't feel her fingers, can't move them, but her right hand is on the stick. Ground Team WRAITH, stand by for ordnance. 30 seconds. WRAITH, you're trailing smoke. I know. 30 seconds. She lines up the target, a compound wall where the enemy fighters are dug in. Her left hand won't work the weapons release, so she uses her knee, jams it against the panel, triggers the release. 2 GBU-12 Paveway 2 laser-guided bombs drop clean. The wall disappears in fire and dust. WRAITH target destroyed. You are cleared to RTB. Return to base, if she can make it. The stick is heavy in her right hand. The F-22 wants to roll inverted, wants to die. She won't let it. Bagram Tower WRAITH, emergency. Single hydraulic system, no flight controls. Request immediate priority. WRAITH, you're cleared. Crash crews are rolling. She makes the approach with one hand. Lands hard so hard the gear struts nearly collapse, but she lands. Alive. The medics pull her from the cockpit. Her left arm is ruined. The doctor says, "You'll never fly again." She says, "We'll see." 3 days later, Cassius Thatcher's office in Manhattan. Was his office. The nameplate has already been removed from the door. He sits across from the board of directors at Thatcher Capital, 12 faces staring at him with expressions ranging from disappointment to barely concealed satisfaction. Mr. Thatcher, the board chair, says in light of the video evidence from Flight 447 and the subsequent media coverage, the board has voted unanimously to request your resignation. Cassius expected this. Doesn't make it easier. I made a mistake under extreme stress. You made multiple mistakes, another board member interrupts. You physically confronted a military officer. You attempted to obstruct emergency procedures. And you were caught on video making classist and potentially racist remarks that have been viewed 40 million times. I apologized. Your apology came 3 days late, and only after your legal counsel advised you to do so. That's not remorse. That's damage control. The board chair slides a document across the table. Your severance package, substantially reduced due to the reputational damage you've caused the firm. Sign it, or we'll contest your departure, and you'll get nothing. Cassius signs. His hand doesn't shake. It should. Outside the building, news crews are waiting. He tries to ignore them. Can't. Mr. Thatcher, do you have any comment on Colonel Foster's reinstatement? Mr. Thatcher, your wife filed for divorce this morning. Any statement? He keeps walking. Gets into a taxi. The driver recognizes him. Hey, you're that guy from the plane. The one who tried to stop the pilot. Cassius says nothing. Man, what were you thinking? She saved everyone, and you treated her like garbage. 1 year later, Nellis Air Force Base. Evening. Clementine walks across the flight line toward her car. Not a rental anymore, but a used Honda Civic she bought 6 months ago when her first paycheck cleared. The flight line is empty, except for the rows of F-22s gleaming under the Nevada sunset. Her phone buzzes. Text message from Felicity Kane, the 8-year-old, from Flight 447, now 9. Ms. Colonel, I got an A on my science project about airplanes. My teacher said I should be a pilot when I grow up. Do you think I can... Clementine smiles, texts back, You can be anything you want, Felicity. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Another text. This one from Sawyer Blake. Hey, Captain Foster. Just finished a flight through some rough weather. Used your technique for riding the turbulence instead of fighting it. Worked perfectly. Thank you for everything. She doesn't respond to that one. Doesn't need to. As she reaches her car, she sees something on the windshield. A piece of paper folded. She opens it. It's a hand-drawn picture crayon like Felicity's, but from a different child. This one shows a woman in a flight suit standing in front of a fighter jet. The caption reads, My hero. Thank you for showing me that heroes don't always look like I thought they would. No signature. Just a drawing. Clementine folds it carefully, puts it in her pocket next to the dog tag she wears every day now. Her left hand trembles as she unlocks the car. She pauses, looks at it. The damaged nerve, the permanent shake, the thing that was supposed to end her career. Still broken, she says quietly. Then she gets in the car and drives home. Because broken doesn't mean finished. It never did. 3 months later, Clementine receives an encrypted email. Subject line, classified eyes only. She opens it. Colonel Foster, this is General Hayes. We have a situation developing in the Taiwan Strait. Experimental aircraft, hostile conditions, mission parameters outside normal operational scope. We need a pilot who's proven they can handle the impossible. Briefing 0600 tomorrow. Secure facility. This one's above top secret. If you accept, you'll be wheels up in 48 hours. Are you in? Clementine stares at the screen. Her left hand trembles. Her right hand moves to the keyboard. She types one word, affirmative. Hits send.